So I think now it should be recognized how much the Women Caucus have really positioned itself at the World Conference on Human Rights in Vienna and shifted, the understanding and the normative framework that lead now to where we are in terms of the recognition on violence against women, gender-based violence, and other forms of normative framework that evolve, including women, peace, and security, and all of this. And I would just like to say that they all came out from the testimonies of the women, and more importantly, because there was really a movement of women coming together. Part of our feminism, as you mentioned, was really defining the process, defining what we want to achieve. Because it is through the feminist approach that we were able to shift, the framing of humanitarian law and international law, because it was not recognized. Yeah, it was through that experience that we are saying, and there will be more feminists who will come out and say this, more survivors and more victims that will come out. Because when we look at where we are now, we are talking about the framework on women, peace, and security, yeah, because that is where all the women, gravitates around the world when we're talking of the issue of sexual violence in situations of war or armed conflict. But what I would like to say is, in the framing of women, peace, and security, we have to recognize that there is a lot of loopholes in that. It does not address all the issues of, the situations of women in armed conflict, because we have limited ourselves. And now I'm a bit critical here, if you allow me, on the framing of women, peace, and security. Because one of the things that I have seen, and I have worked on this issue for these past years as well, is that there is a securitization approach on women, peace, and security. It has now looked at the framing from a military context. We need more women in the military. We need more women in the police force. It does not look at the security from a feminist perspective now. That security was about protection. Security was about protection of women in situations of conflict. But because women, peace, and security has been taken away by the government from the very movement of us, I was there in the first meeting on the drafting of the Women, Peace, and Security to the United Nations. The agenda there was to talk about women and what women go through during war and armed conflict. And to look at the security and the peace angle and how women should be involved in the peace process. I always tell the women, not all this peace process you have to be a part of. You have to politically analyze this peace process and find out what is their agenda. If their agenda does not construe women, you may as well pick up the peace process from the outside instead of sitting in the peace table. There are so many things that women can be engaged, and that does not necessarily be part of the process when the process is so male-dominated and refuse to acknowledge, the struggles and the position of women and the impact of the war on their lives and that of the children. So there are so many things there. So when one has to analyze women, peace, and security, you have to analyze, one, the context of women in situations of armed conflict, your expertise and knowledge in dealing sexual violence in conflict, and how to deal with women who are internally displaced, the IDPs, and the refugee women. And the different forms of gender-based violence they go through is separate from your expertise and knowledge on how to deal with the peace process. Because the peace process is very complicated. You have to be very political in order to be part of the peace process. You have to know the position of the rebel groups, you have to position the government, and you have to have your own position as women. You want to be part of the transitional government, you want to be part of the of the ongoing process from your position point of view. You have to do alliance work. all of these are very important. Do you have a critical mass base behind you to support you in this? So these are the things that you really have to work on. So, we need critical thinking here, as well as for the women. That peace process is about critical engagement. We have to be very critical in all this positioning and not just jump into this whole. If we need to reframe women, peace, and security, then let's reframe it within the feminist framework of engagement, but not just to jump into the flow, of the whole, United Nations framing of that, but to bring our agenda in a collective manner so that they will listen to us. So for me, we need to, bring that forth, because that is where we are now. But as I was saying again, build a movement for the women, build your own critical mass base to back you up when you want to talk about peace and women, peace and security. But more importantly, strategically document all the violations done to women and men during the war and armed conflict, and to the children. Document them, because that is your strategic arm or bullet or whatever. That I wouldn't even say that. That is your strategic goal to bring these cases to court eventually.
Thank you, Indai. Ever more pertinent.
I know I should end it in saying, let's have hope. There is hope in this world. And for women, I think we have gained much more than we have thought, but we keep on moving forward because, the feminist approach is totally different. We have to make sure that our processes are heard, and we are fearless. We should continue just doing this, because it is through this process that we will be able to gain more mileage in the work that we do, more successes, and we're saving women's lives, and that is where it's most important.